AI is completely gonna crush coaches and courses,
Do the offline events or
the ones that has got very good margins are the ones that's relatively small.
what's your call on this?
A webinar is basically a one-day event where show up rate for day 2 is 0.
Welcome to Marketing Funnels with Nipun Sehal. So today we have with us Peng Joon. Hi Peng, welcome to our show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So first of all, you did a brilliant job in marketing. So at what time in your life you decided that you want to be a marketer?
I would say that most of my life I've never really thought about myself being a marketer. For the most parts, I just wanted to make money online. The stuff that I studied had nothing to do with marketing. And I would say that even till today, I don't know if the word marketer is a term I want to be able to give myself. I feel like I put a lot of different hats on, being a typical entrepreneur. So I think that marketing is one of the many different elements, one of the different caps I need to put on. And that's just the price I have to pay, that we all have to pay as entrepreneurs, if we want to be able to scale our businesses.
And lots of people like in our Asian countries, they don't dare to go to US for the events and for learning new things. Majorly like they live over here, and US people hired us like the Asian for doing the work, but you changed the entire concept. So what made your mind to go to US? What was the journey? It was difficult, easy, and what tips you can give to our viewers like for attending the events?
I think, first of all, being from Malaysia, the idea of being able to earn US dollars and spend in Malaysian currency is just a very fascinating concept that I had at the start. To me, I thought to myself, like, then this was like 20 years ago, and I thought to myself, like, if I could just make $1,000 online every month in US dollars, I would have a very comfortable life here in Malaysia. It was just that concept that started the idea of selling online and targeting a US-based audience. And that's what gave me that initial intention or ambition to be able to do it.
Nice. And what was the challenges like first time when you get the visa for US? How's the whole journey? Like you decided to meet Russell, then you meet lots of marketer, Grant Cardone. So how's
I would
that
say
journey?
that was a lot later in my entire journey. I started off just selling digital products online. I wanted to remain anonymous. I wanted to be the person that just makes money online and nobody knows who I am. I never wanted to be in the limelight, never wanted to do social media. I would say that transition only happened much later when I wanted to go from the gaming space, and when I saw these marketing gurus back then doing what it is that they did, I felt like based on what I knew in the gaming space, I would be able to show people how niche marketing and what it is that I did in the gaming space was a lot more effective, and that's how I made that transition.
Amazing. And you did like lots of overseas events and you did lots of webinars also. Now at the point, like now you had been to lots of countries for the events. What did you suggest to people, like do the offline events or do a webinar from Malaysia or the place where they live?
Okay, so from that topic, I would say that live events, the small ones, this is what most people don't see or don't necessarily understand. I would say that the most of the time, the very profitable events in terms of margins are the ones that's relatively small, like less than 100-ish people. The ones that is very big, 1,000 people, that looks very fancy, that looks great on social media, they're the ones that is great for branding and positioning, but in terms of profitability, it may not necessarily be the case because of a lot of things associated with it. The cost, ads, marketing, the ballroom. Typically in many parts of the world, if you want a ballroom or a convention center that fits over 1,000 people, the supply of those ballrooms are very limited, and therefore they know that they can charge a whole lot more because competition is very low for those type of ballrooms. So then the cost of those type of events goes up exponentially. So sure, it sounds like in theory you can do that at scale. But most of the time, the ones that has got very, very good margins are the ones that's relatively small. So there's this trade-off. I would say that for live in-person events, it's great for branding, positioning, community building, attracting high-ticket clients. But at the same time, the ones that is very, very highly scalable are actually virtual events. Not necessarily webinars. I think that the days of scaling webinars where you could put $1 in and get back $3 out, immediate cash on cash return, those days are over. You know, those were the glory days of 2016 to 2019, maybe even up to during COVID, you know, that era at the earlier days. But today's, those opportunities are over in most markets. As you know, people become more sophisticated and they understand that on a webinar, it's typically going to be 90 minutes where you're going to tell me this backstory of rags to riches. You're going to tell me that I'm going to learn 3 secrets, especially in the marketing world, right? People are jaded and bored and blinded by that typical webinar. So I say that there's a different way to do it, and that's through events. Events virtually is very different from webinars. And the reason for that is because when you do an event, number one, it could be a free event just like a webinar, but a differentiator is number one, you could have upsells within the funnel that helps you instantly either recover back at least 50% of your ad cost before your event starts. And of course, if you're running it to warm and hot audiences, it's even possible to be profitable before the event starts, where it covers your ad cost. On top of that, when you're doing an event, this is where, unlike a typical webinar, where you have to sell this $2,000 offer at the end of 90 minutes, you could have different price points. You could have a $97 recurring. You know, I can see in your backdrop, you've done, you know, very, very well scaling SaaS for high level. So for example, that could be one, right? You could sell one-to-many with low ticket recurring that targets the masses. Number two, you could sell a core offer. You could bundle it with a 1-year plan for your recurring. You could sell high ticket. You could get people to come, and then at the end of it, get them to go on an application where it's not for everybody, but for a small percentage of people who want to, you know, get your done for you. They want to be part of your mastermind, your training, your coaching. You can do that as well. So events virtually is very, very scalable. You can do this for thousands, tens and thousands of people. And that model is something that is going to give you a lot less headaches, a lot less risk, as opposed to live in-person events. They all have their role. They all serve different things.
Right. So if we talk about the events of online, it's like a 3-day challenge, 5-day challenge. And we see that the retention time, sometimes people don't stick to that 3 days. So what's your call on this, like against 1 hour webinar or 3 hour webinar versus 3-day challenge?
Sure. So if you think about a webinar is basically a 1-day event where show up rate for day 2 is 0. That's what it is, right? At the end of the day, a cost per lead and a cost per virtual event lead registration is going to be somewhat similar. But the differentiator is the show up rate on a webinar versus an event is going to be a little bit different. I would say that for a virtual event, it's going to be higher. Reason being, it feels, if you do it right, if you set up context, if there's some sort of pre-training, if there's some sort of skin in the game where they can get some sort of actionable checklist and they're doing something because it feels like, hey, before you come, do this thing first, then the odds of them showing up for this virtual event when they're going to do this thing is going to be a lot higher than that typical webinar. So on top of that, even if your virtual event, your stick rate is bad and you get 20% of people dropping off for day 2 and the next day, it is still going to beat a webinar, whereby a webinar, because it's a 1-day event, it means that day 2 for a webinar is basically 0% attendance. So a bad attendance on a virtual event is still going to be better than no attendance on a webinar. That's how I think about it.
Amazing. And like, I work with my wife is a co-founder, and you work with Shu Yang, so your wife. So sometimes while traveling, we keep on discussing about the work, and sometimes at the work we are discussing about the family. So sometimes these things, lots of time it happened. So how you cope up with that work-life relationship?
I think that's a huge topic over there. Balancing it out, I think sometimes is calling it out when that thing happens. Okay, so for example, if let's say there's some sort of difference in opinion or conflict of for whatever reason, okay, this is where I think calling it out, which is like, do you want me now to be able to put on the role of being the partner in the relationship, or is this coming from an angle of business? Because those are going to be two very, very different answers. One is if it's from the angle of a partner, it would be like, I'm going to put my partner hat on and I'm just going to listen to your problem and I'm just going to be there. I'm going to be supportive. However, if it's a role of that business partner, then it's going to be different. I might push back. I might, come from the angle of being a lot more critical. So I think that the ability to distinguish these two things when those circumstances arises is crucial.
Right. So very well said. So over here, like if we talk about Shuing, so now I think he's gonna be the next big marketer because she knows the sales and processes. And the problem with most of the marketers are, like what I felt in the industry is, they are good in selling, but they are not good in processes. So what are your take on this?
I think that as entrepreneurs, we all need to surround ourselves with people, team members that makes up for either our weakness or the things that we don't want to handle. So for me personally, I first think about what is my role. My role being the things that either I enjoy doing, that I'm good at, that either gives me a sense of fulfillment, that energizes me. So over the years, I would say that I've distilled it down to what I call the 3 C's. This is something that my team is very aware of. And I say that I only want to handle these 3 C's. If it's outside of the scope of these 3 C's, I either want to let it go to somebody else, replace it with a process or a person. Okay, and the 3 C's are this. Now, the first C is creative. This is basically whenever we launch a new campaign, I want to be able to think about like, what is the strategic direction? What are the ads? What are the hooks? What are the different angles that would be? So things that requires creativity. I like that. I feel that it's something that I enjoy doing and that I can give good feedback on. The second C is closing. So closing, not in the sense of one-on-one closing, but selling one-to-many. So this could be like selling through a live in-person event, selling through one-to-many through an evergreen webinar, right? Creating a sales video that is automated. So things like that, closing one-to-many, I feel like that's something that I've spent over a decade mastering that skill set, and that would make a direct impact on a bottom line. And number 3 would be coaching. So coaching is something that I feel helps me to sharpen my skill set. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I want to be able to not so much one-on-one, but one-to-many. Okay, one-on-one because it's limiting my time, but one-to-many, something I do once a week, once every 2 weeks, is something that I don't mind. So anything outside the scope of these 3 C's, whether it's motivating my team, finance, things like that, it's either, can I do it if I really wanted to? Yes, but it's not either in line with my strengths or something that I really enjoy doing.
Amazing. We talk about coaching. So how coaching is shifting in the AI era?
Oh man. So I believe that AI is completely going to crush coaches and courses if they don't know how to pivot. So the example I'm going to give is, a year ago, I wanted to run a full marathon. I've never ran a full marathon my entire life. The thought of it is extremely scary. And one of the first things that I did was, I went to AI and I said, I want to be able to run a full marathon in about 4 months. Walk me through the process. What should my weekly mileage be? Monday to Sunday, exactly what type of training I should be doing, whether it should be strength training, whether it should be running. At the same time, I don't want to turn into a full-time runner and get a runner's body. I want to be able to still maintain muscle. So I told AI that context, and AI gave me this full-fledged game plan, right? Now, if you think about that is basically applicable in any market. Anybody now can go to AI and say, I want to be able to do this. I've never done it before. It's very scary. Give me the game plan on how it's done. So what AI can do, it can give anybody in any market the strategy based on your outcome, based on your current circumstances, based on your current skill set. Now, at the same time, here's what AI can't do, right? AI can't give immediate feedback. Meaning, unlike a coach in running, if I really wanted to take things to next level, and I still maintain my gym coach, is that it can't necessarily give you that ongoing motivation. It can't look at your form for now and say, hey, based on this movement here, you're either lifting your legs too much or you're kicking back too much, right? AI can't give you that for now. Okay, so AI can't also give me accountability and environment. It can't say, okay, I've paired you up with this other person on Saturday at 5 a.m. and you're going to be doing this run together with this other person, so that you either do what you say you're going to do or increases the odds, right? So how does this link back to creators, coaches, course sellers, whatever it might be? It means that we got to be able to think about and figure out what is our role in helping our audience get this specific result if our audience can easily get the tactical, the strategic, the moves to do it. So this means that it is our goal to either make our offer AI powered, so either putting in the custom GPTs, the Claude skills, either understanding how to create accountability environment to change our audience's mindset, belief system, attitude around it, right? Because these are things that AI will not be able to do for now. So this is where it will either be the best of times for some of these coaches that understand how to include these elements, or the worst of times if they feel that their goal is to be able to give information. That's when they're going to get destroyed.
I mean, so here there is one more question related to marathon. So lots of people, when I talk to the entrepreneurs, clients, and I said like, what you are doing in the health state, and they said like, we don't have time for this. At what moment in your life you realize that health is more important than money? Because lots of people think because health can buy money, but money can't buy health. So at what moment? Because I see you are doing now marathon, high rocks, and I see you more in the gym than the events. So
I've always felt that the reason why I am into this so much, and I can tell you that for the most of my life, maybe this only started like 10 years ago, it is because I realized that in this journey of entrepreneurship, this is the only thing we'll never be able to outsource or delegate. So this really shows the true character of someone, because money can't buy this. Money can buy you the supplements, maybe a better diet, but it's still on you to be able to have that level of determination, to be able to have that discipline to go do that thing. So to me, it's an entire package, because what a shame it would be if we work so hard to be able to get that success in our minds, only to realize that we don't have the health to enjoy it.
Very nice. And one last question I have is like, I want to be top 5 marketer in the world in AI. So what 3 mistakes I should not do which will hamper the whole process?
I think number 1 is to be able to not be a generalist. I think that most of the time when people want to be able to brand themselves on something, they tend to be able to make it very broad, thinking that it will attract more people. And typically generalists are the ones that is broke or forgotten, because they try to be that generalist. So I would say, like, number 1, the mistake is not to be that generalist and to be able to really focus in and have that level of depth rather than width. Another one would be being very strategic about the terminology and what is the category that you're fighting for. In the book Play Bigger, it talks about category kings. And I believe that to work towards a category king, so for example, like let's say you mentioned AI, right? It is about strategically utilizing terminologies and jargons in everything that you do, whether it's social media, email, your messaging, so that when people think about that word, they think about you, right? So for example, like for me, many years ago, I bought, salesprocess.com. It was like a 35-year-old website, because in my mind, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to make it so that in my messaging, in my emails, in my social media, in my ads, in my sales letters, my sales video, I want to be able to be known that, hey, if this person, if you're building a sales process, I want to be able to work towards that, right? But sales process, obviously, is a very competitive word. But we all need to be able to have the goal in order to work towards what's the word we're trying to conquer. Okay, so like for example, sales process would be one of them. So I intentionally utilize it in my messaging across all platforms.
Amazing. And your number fan, are you an Eminem fan? So in all your emails, the signature says your number one fan, Pang Joon.
I can't even remember how it started. I just started doing it like 15 years ago, and it just stuck.
Okay. And if people wants to reach you out for the legacy mentoring or for coaching, for consultation, which is the right platform to reach you out?
I think out of the different platforms, I'm probably most active on Instagram. So you can send me a DM and we'll send you the different resources if you want to work together, or we want to explore and see how we can help you with our either done for you or solutions or training or coaching. Yeah, just send me a DM.
Done. And one last tip, if somebody wants to start their marketing agency today in 2026, what tip you can give?
I would say that right now, there's no better time to create anything that is AI powered done for you. The bread and butter for agencies pre-AI, you look at all these different things, whether it's social media, whether it's funnels, whatever it might be, connected with what I mentioned earlier, which is like, if you're doing social media done for you, don't try to be a generalist social media done for you, because that's what everybody else is doing. Try to go deep, try to make it so that it's an agency specifically for dentists, chiropractors. Try to go deep on like that process. Why? Because because AI can reverse engineer any model, any framework, any strategy. So for example, if let's say I had to start all over again and I just targeted any company that had some sort of recurring or subscription or membership site, so whether they're a SaaS or whether they're a coach with some sort of recurring, imagine if my offer was, I will help you create a 90-day onboarding plan, right? Now, to create this 90-day onboarding plan, there are so many different resources out there, books, podcasts, trainings, that I can feed AI these specific models. So now, when I go to these potential clients, I can say, hey, let me help you create this 90-day customized onboarding training for every single member that comes in, every single lead and if I can help you solve your churn rate by just 1%. See, that's the difference between something that is $1,000 a month and $10,000 a month. So that would be the number one thing I would advise agencies, which is have a level of depth, because it creates a differentiator to create something that's proprietary or different that will separate you from everybody else.
Right. And now people are coming up with, even the clients are coming up with the GPT written stuff. Hey, you need to do this. And they are advising marketer, hey, you are not doing, you need to do this. So lots of people are doing this. And thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I know like it's very difficult for you to get a time. So I just fly to Malaysia just to get a podcast with you.
My pleasure. And I'm glad.
Thank you so much.